Eleanor stood in the corner of the drawing room. Her stepmother's voice cut through the air like a knife. The words were meant to hurt. They always were. "No gentleman will want you," Lady Ashford said. She smoothed her perfect golden hair. "You are 26. You have no dowry. You have that unfortunate brown hair. Those common brown eyes. Really, Eleanor, you should be grateful we allow you to stay." The guests tittered behind their fans. Eleanor felt heat rise in her cheeks. She kept her eyes down. She had learned that looking up only made things worse. Her fingers twisted in the worn fabric of her grey dress. It had been her mother's once. That was 10 years ago now. Perhaps she could be a governess, one lady suggested. Her tone was not kind. "Who would hire her?" Another woman laughed. "She has no accomplishments, no connections." Eleanor wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. She wanted to run from the room, but she could not. Lady Ashford had commanded her to pour tea, so she stood there. She waited. She endured. Her father had died when she was 16. He had loved her mother desperately. When her mother passed in childbirth, something in him died too. He remarried quickly. Lady Ashford was beautiful and cold. She brought 2 daughters with her. They were pretty and cruel like their mother. Eleanor became invisible in her own home. The servants pitied her. They snuck her extra food sometimes, but they could not protect her from words. Words were Lady Ashford's favorite weapon. Every morning, Eleanor woke before dawn. She tended the fires the maids had missed. She mended clothes in the dark. She made herself useful so they could not cast her out. She had nowhere to go. No money. No family who cared. Her stepsisters, Cecilia and Diana, enjoyed her suffering. They borrowed her few nice things and never returned them. They told her she was ugly. They said no man would ever love her. After years of hearing it, Eleanor almost believed them. But deep inside, in a place she kept hidden, Eleanor dreamed. She dreamed of kindness. She dreamed of a home where she was wanted. She dreamed of someone who would see her, really see her. Not just the shabby dress and the quiet voice. Someone who would see her heart. She read books in stolen moments. She loved poetry and stories of faraway places. She sketched in a small notebook. She kept hidden. She drew birds and flowers and landscapes she had never seen. These small joys kept her alive inside. Today was worse than usual. Lady Ashford was entertaining potential suitors. Not for Eleanor, never for Eleanor. For Cecilia and Diana. The drawing room filled with young men. They came to admire her stepsisters. They barely glanced at Eleanor in the corner. "More tea, girl." Lady Ashford snapped her fingers. Eleanor moved forward. Her hands were steady, even though her heart hurt. She poured tea with perfect grace. Her mother had taught her that Lady Ashford could take many things, but she could not take what Eleanor's true mother had given her. "At least she is useful for something," Cecilia said. She giggled behind her hand. The young men laughed with her. Eleanor returned to her corner. She wished she could disappear completely. Across London, in a grand townhouse on Berkeley Square, Richard Thornton stood at the window. He was the Earl of Ashcroft. He was 50 years old. He was alone. His wife had died 5 years ago. Catherine had been his whole world. They married young. They loved deeply. She gave him 3 sons. Then a fever took her. Richard felt as if he had died with her. His sons wanted him to remarry. They said he needed companionship. They said the house needed a mistress. Really, they wanted him distracted. They wanted freedom to live their wild lives. If their father remarried, he would stop watching them so closely. "Father, you must come to the Ashford ball tonight," his eldest son Thomas said. He was 28 and charming. There will be lovely young ladies there. I have no interest, Richard said. His voice was tired. You cannot mourn forever, his second son, William, added. He was 26. Mother would not want you to be alone. Richard said nothing. How could he explain? Catherine had been his partner, his friend, his love. Other women seemed like shadows, empty, meaningless. His youngest son, James, was quieter. He was 23. He understood pain better than his brothers. Perhaps just one dance, father, for appearance sake, Richard sighed. Society expected things. As an Earl, he had duties. He had not attended a social function in months. People were beginning to talk. Perhaps one evening would quiet the gossips. Very well, he said. One evening, his sons exchanged pleased looks. They had plans of their own. Plans that involved young ladies and courtship and freedom from their father's watchful eye. Richard dressed that evening without enthusiasm. His valet helped him into his black evening coat. He looked in the mirror. Grey touched his dark hair at the temples. Lines marked his face. He had been handsome once. Catherine had told him so. Now he just looked tired. The Ashford townhouse blazed with lights when they arrived. Music spilled from the windows. Carriages lined the street. London society had come out in force. Lady Ashford's balls were always well attended. Richard entered with his sons. Immediately, young ladies and their mothers surrounded them. The Thornton men were quite a prize, an Earl and his 3 handsome sons, all wealthy, all titled or soon to be. Thomas and William loved the attention. They bowed and smiled and flirted. James was more reserved, but even he seemed interested in the pretty faces around them. Richard stood back. He observed. This was why his sons wanted him here. They wanted to court these young ladies. They wanted his approval, or at least his absence of disapproval. Lady Ashford swept forward. She was beautiful in a cold way. Her dress was the latest fashion. Her smile was calculated. Lord Ashcroft, she said. She curtsied perfectly. How wonderful that you grace us with your presence. May I introduce my daughters? Cecilia and Diana are the jewels of this season. She gestured. 2 young women stepped forward. They were pretty. They smiled with practiced charm. Richard saw the calculation in their eyes. They saw his title, his wealth. Not him. Charming, he said politely. Nothing more. But his sons were very interested. Thomas asked Cecilia to dance. William requested Diana's hand. Soon both couples were on the floor. Lady Ashford looked triumphant. Richard moved away. He found the refreshment table. He did not want to dance. He did not want to make conversation. He wanted to go home. Then he saw her. She stood against the wall near the doorway to the servants' hall. Her dress was grey and plain. Her hair was simply dressed. She was not beautiful in the showy way of the other ladies, but something about her caught his attention. She looked sad. No, not just sad. Resigned, as if she had stopped hoping for anything good. Her hands were folded. Her eyes were downcast. She seemed to be trying to disappear. A woman swept past her. The woman's tone was harsh, though Richard could not hear the words. The girl in grey flinched. She nodded. She moved quickly to help serve refreshments. Richard watched. She moved with quiet grace. She was careful, efficient, invisible to everyone else. But he saw her. Who was she? Not a servant, he thought. Her posture was too refined, her movements too educated, but clearly not a guest either. No one spoke to her. No one looked at her. She carried a tray of glasses. A young man bumped into her carelessly. The tray tilted. She caught it with quick reflexes. Not a single glass fell. The young man did not even notice. He walked away laughing with his friends. The girl in grey steadied herself. For just a moment, her mask slipped. Richard saw pain in her face, deep, bone-tired pain. Then she smoothed her expression. She continued her task. Something stirred in Richard's chest. Something he had not felt in years, curiosity. And something else, concern for this unknown girl who suffered in silence. He moved closer. He positioned himself near the refreshment table. When she passed, he spoke quietly. "Might I have a glass?" She looked up. Her eyes met his. For just a second, they were brown. But not common brown, as someone had once told her. They were warm brown, like honey in sunlight, like autumn leaves. "Of course, my lord," she said softly. Her voice was lovely, musical. She handed him a glass. Her hand trembled slightly. He took it carefully. Their fingers did not touch, but he noticed her hands. They were small and graceful. A bit rough from work, but elegant still. "Thank you," he said. He tried to catch her eyes again, but she had already turned away. She disappeared back into the shadows. Richard stood holding his glass. For the first time in 5 years, he felt something other than emptiness. He wanted to know her name. The ball ended near dawn. Eleanor helped the servants clean. Her feet ached. Her head throbbed. But she worked quietly. She always did. Lady Ashford was in a glorious mood. "Did you see?" she said to her daughters. The Earl's sons both showed interest. "Thomas danced with you 3 times. Cecilia, 3 times. And William could not take his eyes from you, Diana." Eleanor carried glasses to the kitchen. She did not care about the Earl's sons. She had barely noticed them. But she remembered the older gentleman, the one with kind eyes, the one who actually looked at her. He had grey at his temples, lines on his face, but his eyes were clear and blue. When he thanked her, he meant it. It had been so long since anyone truly saw her. Just that small moment warmed something inside her. "Eleanor," Lady Ashford's voice was sharp. "Come here." Eleanor hurried to the drawing room. Lady Ashford sat with her daughters. They were still in their ball gowns. Eleanor stood before them in her grey dress. The contrast was deliberate. Lady Ashford enjoyed it. "The Earl of Ashcroft and his sons will call tomorrow," Lady Ashford said. Her eyes gleamed. "You will make yourself scarce. I will not have you embarrassing us. Stay in your room, or better yet, visit the tenants. Take them those baskets I prepared. Be gone for the entire day." "Yes, ma'am," Eleanor said. "And wear your worst dress," Cecilia added with a laugh. "We would not want the tenants to think you important." Eleanor curtsied and left. She did not mind visiting the tenants. They were kind to her. She brought them food and medicine. She read to the children. It was the only time she felt useful in a good way. The next morning, Eleanor left early. She walked to the village carrying heavy baskets. Her arms ached, but she did not complain. The day was grey and cold. Rain threatened. She visited old Mrs. Cooper first. The woman was bedridden. Eleanor brought her soup and bread. She tidied the small cottage. She read from the Bible. Mrs. Cooper held her hand. "You are too good for that house, child," Mrs. Cooper said. "I knew your mother. You have her heart." Tears pricked Eleanor's eyes. She blinked them away. "Thank you," she whispered. She visited 3 more families. By afternoon, rain was falling steadily. Eleanor had no umbrella. She was soaked through by the time she started back. Her thin dress clung to her. She shivered violently. She took the long way home. She hoped the family calls would be finished. She could not bear to see Lady Ashford's triumph or her stepsister's gloating faces. But fate had other plans. Richard had indeed called at the Ashford house. His sons were eager. Thomas and William practically dragged him there. James came reluctantly. Lady Ashford received them in the drawing room. Cecilia and Diana were perfectly dressed. They served tea gracefully. They conversed charmingly. They were everything young ladies should be. But Richard was bored. He answered politely. He observed his son's interest. But his mind wandered. He kept thinking of the girl in grey. He had asked casually who she was. Lady Ashford's expression had turned cold. "Oh, that was my late husband's daughter," she said dismissively. "A burden I bear from Christian duty. She helps with household tasks. Quite plain and unfortunate, I am afraid." Richard said nothing. But he noted the cruelty in her tone. The girl was not a servant. She was Lady Ashford's stepdaughter. Yet she was treated worse than the lowest maid. Something about the situation disturbed him deeply, but it was not his business. He had come to chaperone his sons, nothing more. The visit ended, but Thomas and William begged to return the next day, and the next. Soon they were visiting daily. Lady Ashford was delighted. She planned an engagement announcement. She did not care which son married which daughter. Either match would be triumphant. Richard accompanied them less frequently. But he came sometimes, each time he looked for the girl in grey. He never saw her. She was always conveniently absent. 3 weeks passed. Then Lady Ashford made a bold move. She invited the Thornton family to dinner. An intimate family evening, she said. Richard could not refuse without rudeness. The dinner was elaborate. Lady Ashford spared no expense. Cecilia and Diana were lovely in their finest gowns. They laughed and entertained. Thomas and William were clearly smitten. "Where is your stepdaughter this evening?" Richard asked during a lull in conversation. Lady Ashford's smile tightened. "Eleanor is indisposed. She takes her meals in her room." "She is always indisposed when we visit," James observed quietly. "One might think you hide her deliberately." Lady Ashford's eyes flashed, but she laughed. "Nonsense. The girl is simply shy. She has no conversation, no accomplishments. I spare her the embarrassment of social occasions." Richard's jaw tightened, but again he said nothing. It was not his place. After dinner, he excused himself for air. He walked onto the terrace. Rain had started again. He stood under the portico watching it fall. Then he saw her, a figure in a wet, ragged dress, hurried toward the servants' entrance. She moved quickly, trying not to be seen, but Richard saw her clearly. It was the girl from the ball, Eleanor. She was soaked through. She shivered violently. Her lips were blue. She carried empty baskets. She had clearly been out in the weather for hours. Without thinking, Richard moved. He crossed the terrace quickly. He intercepted her before she reached the door. "Miss," he said gently. She gasped. She looked up. Recognition flashed in her eyes. Then fear. She curtsied quickly, water dripping from her dress. "My lord, I am sorry. I did not mean to disturb. I was just—" "You are freezing," he said. His voice was firm. "You will catch your death." "I am fine," she said automatically. Her teeth chattered. Richard pulled off his evening coat. Before she could protest, he draped it around her shoulders. It swallowed her small frame, but it was warm and dry. "My lord, you should not," she stammered. "Hush," he said. Not unkindly. Go inside. Get warm. That is an order. She stared at him. No one had shown her such simple kindness in years. Tears filled her eyes. She blinked them away quickly. "Thank you," she whispered. Then she fled inside. Richard stood in the rain. His coat was gone, but he did not care. Something had shifted in his chest. That girl, Eleanor. There was something about her that called to him. He returned to the drawing room. Lady Ashford noticed his missing coat immediately. "Lord Ashcroft, whatever happened?" "I loaned it to your stepdaughter," he said calmly. She was caught in the rain. She was quite cold. The room went silent. Lady Ashford's face turned red, then white. Cecilia and Diana stared. Thomas and William looked confused. James watched his father with curious eyes. "How very kind of you," Lady Ashford said through clenched teeth. "Though Eleanor should have known better than to be out so late. I will speak to her." "She was visiting your tenants," Richard said. His voice was mild, but there was steel underneath. "Bringing them supplies, a charitable mission. Surely nothing to scold." Lady Ashford could not argue without appearing heartless. She smiled tightly. Of course, how good of her. But her eyes promised Eleanor would pay for this embarrassment. Richard made his excuses soon after. On the carriage ride home, James spoke. "You like her," he said to his father. "Who?" Thomas asked. "The stepdaughter, Eleanor." Father noticed her. "She is nobody," William said dismissively. "No dairy, no beauty. Why would father care?" But James was right. Richard did care. He could not stop thinking about her. Those sad eyes, that quiet dignity, the way she thanked him, as if kindness was a foreign miracle. That night he could not sleep. He paced his study. Something was very wrong in the Ashford house. Eleanor was being mistreated, perhaps abused. It was not his business, but Catherine's voice seemed to whisper in his mind. She would have cared. She would have helped. What could he do? He barely knew the girl. He could not interfere in another man's family, except the man was dead. Lady Ashford held power over Eleanor. Eleanor had no protection. An idea formed. It was wild, impulsive. Not like him at all. But once it took root, it would not leave. 2 days later, Richard returned to the Ashford house, alone. He requested a private audience with Lady Ashford. She received him in her sitting room, practically glowing with expectation. She thought he came to discuss his son's courtship. "Lady Ashford," Richard began, "I have a proposition." "Yes?" She leaned forward eagerly. "I wish to marry your stepdaughter, Eleanor." The words hung in the air. Lady Ashford's mouth fell open. For a full minute, she said nothing. Then she laughed. It was not a kind sound. "You jest, my lord." "I do not," Richard said calmly. "I am quite serious." But Eleanor, she is nothing. No one. Why would you want her?" "That is my concern," Richard said. "I am offering her marriage, a home, protection. I assume she has no dowry." "None whatsoever," Lady Ashford said. Her mind was racing. If Eleanor married an Earl, she would be free of the burden, but it made no sense. Why would he want her? "Does she have a choice in the matter?" Richard asked. "She will do as I say," Lady Ashford replied. "She has no right to refuse." Richard's eyes hardened. "Nevertheless, I will speak to her myself." Eleanor was summoned. She came to the sitting room with dread. What had she done now? Lady Ashford had been furious about the coat incident. Eleanor had been denied supper for 2 nights as punishment. She entered and saw the Earl. Her heart jumped. He stood when she entered, a gentleman standing for her. It was unheard of. "Miss Eleanor," he said gently, "please sit." She sat on the edge of a chair, her hands twisted in her lap. Lady Ashford watched with calculating eyes. "I have asked for your hand in marriage," Richard said simply. "I am older than you, I am widowed, but I can offer you a good home, kindness, respect. You would want for nothing." Eleanor's world tilted. This could not be real. Men did not marry her, especially not earls, especially not kind men with blue eyes who gave her their coats. "Why?" she whispered. "Because I wish to," he said. "But you must consent. I will not force you. If you refuse, I will accept your answer." Lady Ashford made a strangled sound. "She consents. Of course she consents." "Let her answer," Richard said firmly. Eleanor looked at him. Really looked. She saw no cruelty in his face, no trick. He seemed sincere. And what was her alternative? Stay here forever? Be beaten down until nothing remained? "I consent," she said softly. Relief washed through Richard. He had half expected her to refuse. "Then we will marry quickly. 1 week. I will procure a special license." 1 week. Lady Ashford gasped, but secretly she was delighted. Eleanor would be gone, out of her house. That was all that mattered. The next 7 days passed in a blur. Eleanor barely saw her betrothed. He sent messages, he arranged everything. A modest trousseau appeared. A lady's maid was assigned to her. Eleanor felt like she was dreaming. Lady Ashford was sickeningly sweet to her face, but at night she came to Eleanor's room. "You trapped him somehow," she hissed. "You will make him regret this. You are nothing. You will never be enough." Eleanor said nothing, but the words burrowed into her heart. She was nothing. She would never be enough. What had she done? The wedding day arrived cold and bright. It was a small ceremony. Richard's sons attended, looking confused and displeased. A few family friends came. Lady Ashford and her daughters wore false smiles. Eleanor wore a simple white dress. It was the finest thing she had ever owned. She stood before the vicar and repeated her vows. Her voice shook. Richard's was steady and sure. When the vicar pronounced them married, Richard took her hand. His was warm and strong. Hers was ice-cold and trembling. He did not let go. They rode to his townhouse in silence. Eleanor stared out the carriage window. She was a countess now, Lady Ashcroft. It seemed impossible. At the house, servants lined up to meet her. They bowed and curtsied. The housekeeper, Mrs. Blake, smiled warmly. "Welcome home, my lady," she said. "My lady." Eleanor almost looked around for someone else, but Mrs. Blake was speaking to her. Richard showed her through the grand house. It was beautiful. Rich carpets, fine furniture, paintings on every wall. Eleanor felt like a beggar in a palace. Finally, they reached her chambers. They connected to his through a shared dressing room. The rooms were lovely, done in soft blues and creams. A fire burned cheerfully. "These are yours," Richard said. "You may change anything you like." Eleanor nodded. She could not speak. It was all too much. "You must be tired," Richard continued. "Rest. We will dine together at 8. If you need anything, ring for your maid. Her name is Mary. She is kind." He turned to leave. Eleanor found her voice. "My lord?" He looked back. "Why did you do this?" she asked. "Truly?" Richard was silent a moment. Then he said, "Because you looked like I felt lost. Alone. Hurting. I thought perhaps we could be less alone together." Then he left. Eleanor stood in her beautiful new room, For the first time in 10 years, she cried, not from sadness, from relief, from hope, from the terrifying possibility that life might actually be different now. She was the Countess of Ashcroft, and she had no idea what came next. The first weeks of marriage were strange. Eleanor moved through the grand house like a ghost. She expected cruelty at every turn, but none came. Richard was kind, distant but kind. He did not demand anything from her. He gave her space. He asked about her comfort. He treated her with respect. They took meals together. At first, conversation was stilted. Eleanor was afraid to speak. She had been silenced for so long. But Richard was patient. "Do you like to read?" he asked one evening at dinner. "Yes, my lord," she said quietly. "Please call me Richard. And you must use the library. It was my wife's favorite room." Eleanor looked up. His face was sad when he mentioned his late wife. She understood that sadness, loss, had shaped them both. "I will," she said. "Thank you." Slowly, carefully, they built a routine. Breakfast together in the morning room. Quiet dinners in the evening. He worked in his study during the day. She explored the house and gardens. They were polite, careful, like two wounded animals circling each other. Mary, the lady's maid, was a godsend. She was young and cheerful. She helped Eleanor dress in her fine new gowns. She did her hair in fashionable styles. She chatted about household gossip. "His lordship has been so sad since the late countess died," Mary said one morning, "but you have brought life back to the house. The servants are glad." Eleanor doubted that very much, but she appreciated Mary's kindness. Richard's sons visited often. They were polite, but cold. They clearly thought their father had gone mad. Thomas and William were angry. Their plans with Cecilia and Diana had fallen apart. James was quieter. He watched Eleanor with thoughtful eyes. "You make father happy," he said to her one day. They were alone in the drawing room. "I hardly speak to him," Eleanor said, surprised. "Exactly," James smiled. "You do not demand anything. You do not perform. You just are. It is restful." Eleanor had never thought of herself as restful before. It was a strange compliment, but she treasured it. One evening, Richard found her in the library. She was curled in a chair by the fire. A book lay open in her lap. She looked up when he entered. "I am sorry," she said quickly. "I did not mean to intrude." "You are not intruding," he said. "This is your library too." He poured himself brandy. He settled in the chair across from her. They sat in comfortable silence. The fire crackled. Rain pattered on the windows. "What are you reading?" he asked. She showed him the spine. "Poetry, Wordsworth." "Ah," he said. "Catherine loved poetry too." "Your wife?" "Yes." His voice was soft. She was everything good. Eleanor hesitated. Then she said carefully, "You must have loved her very much." "I did." He looked at the fire. "I still do. I always will." The words should have hurt. But Eleanor understood. "I am not trying to replace her," she said quietly. "I know I never could." Richard looked at her then. Really looked. Her brown eyes were earnest. Her face was open. She was not jealous, not demanding, just honest. "You are kinder than I deserve," he said. "You saved me," Eleanor replied. "You do not know what my life was like. Every day was pain. You gave me peace. I will always be grateful." Something passed between them. An understanding. They were two people carrying grief. They could hold space for each other without demands. After that night, something shifted. They talked more. Richard told her about his sons, about his duties as Earl, about his childhood. Eleanor listened with quiet attention. She asked thoughtful questions. She understood more than he expected. In turn, she began to share her own story, how her mother died, how her father faded, how Lady Ashford turned her into a servant in her own home. She spoke without self-pity, just facts. But Richard heard the pain underneath. "She was cruel to you," he said. His voice was tight with anger. "She was afraid," Eleanor said. "I think she knew my father never loved her. He loved my mother still, even in death. It made her bitter." "That does not excuse her treatment of you." "No," Eleanor agreed. "But understanding helps. Anger is heavy. I would rather let it go." Richard marveled at her. How did she remain so gentle, so free of bitterness? She had every right to be angry, but instead she chose peace. He found himself watching her. The way she moved through rooms, the way she spoke softly to servants, the way she paused to look at flowers. She noticed small, beautiful things. She treasured them. One afternoon, he found her in the garden. She was sketching in a small notebook. He approached quietly. She was so absorbed, she did not hear him. He looked over her shoulder. The sketch was beautiful. A perfect rendering of the rose bush before her, every petal detailed, every thorn carefully drawn. "You are talented," he said. She jumped. The notebook fell. He caught it. He looked through the pages. Dozens of sketches, birds, flowers, landscapes, faces. They were all exquisite. "These are remarkable," he said. "Why did you never mention this?" Eleanor blushed. "It is nothing, just a silly hobby." "It is not nothing." He handed the book back carefully. "This is a gift." No one had ever called her gift a gift before. Her stepmother said it was a waste of time. Her stepsisters mocked her efforts, but Richard looked at her work with respect, with admiration. "Thank you," she whispered. "Will you draw something for me?" he asked. "For my study?" "Truly, truly." So she did. She drew the view from his study window, the garden in autumn, the trees turning gold and red, the fountain in the center. She spent hours on it, making it perfect. When she gave it to him, his eyes widened. "Eleanor, this is beautiful. This is art." "I am glad you like it," she said. She smiled, a real smile. It transformed her face. Richard felt his heart stutter. She was not plain. Not at all. She was lovely. How had he not seen it before? Her eyes glowed when she smiled. Her whole face lit up. He had the drawing framed immediately. He hung it above his desk. Every time he looked at it, he thought of her. They began spending more time together. He took her driving in the park. She was nervous at first. Society would judge her, but Richard did not care. He introduced her proudly as his countess. Some people whispered, but Richard's rank protected her. No one dared insult the Countess of Ashcroft to her face. They attended the theatre. Eleanor had never been. She watched the performance with wonder. Richard watched her. Her expressions were so open, so genuine. She felt everything deeply. At home, they played chess in the evenings. Eleanor was surprisingly good. She beat him more than once. "Where did you learn this?" he asked, surprised. "My father taught me," she said. "Before he married Lady Ashford, we used to play every evening." "You must have been close." "We were." Her voice was sad. "I lost him twice, once when my mother died, and again when he did." Richard reached across the board. He covered her hand with his. "I am sorry." She looked at their hands. His was so much larger than hers, strong and warm. She felt tears prick her eyes, but they were not entirely sad tears. "Thank you," she said. They stayed like that for a moment, hands touching, both feeling something they could not name yet. Winter came. The townhouse grew cold despite roaring fires. Eleanor caught a chill. She tried to hide it, but Richard noticed her pale face, her cough. "You are ill," he said firmly. "To bed with you." "I am fine," she protested weakly. "Eleanor." His voice was stern but caring. "Bed. Now. I will send for the doctor." She obeyed. She was too tired to argue. The doctor came. He prescribed rest and warm broth. Richard sat with her. He read to her while she slept. He brought her tea himself. "You do not need to do this," she said. Her voice was hoarse. "The servants can care for me." "I want to," he said simply. She fell back asleep with his voice reading poetry in her ears. She felt safe, cared for. It was a feeling she had almost forgotten existed. When she recovered, she found he had been by her side almost constantly. Mary told her he barely slept. He refused to leave her care to servants. "Why?" Eleanor asked him. "Because you matter," Richard said. His voice was rough. "You matter to me." It was the closest either of them had come to admitting what was growing between them. Eleanor felt her heart skip. She looked at him. His blue eyes were intense. "You matter to me too," she whispered. Something in the air changed. They were not just polite strangers anymore. They were not just a convenient arrangement. They were becoming something else, something neither had expected. Richard began to touch her more. Nothing improper, just small things. His hand at her elbow when they walked. His fingers brushing hers when he handed her things. Each touch sent warmth through her. Eleanor found herself seeking him out. She would join him in his study while he worked. She read quietly in the corner. He liked having her there. Her presence was soothing. "You are not intruding," he said one day when she apologized. "I find I work better when you are here. You are my good luck charm." She blushed. But she was pleased. One snowy evening, they sat before the fire. Eleanor was embroidering. Richard was reading. It was peaceful, domestic, perfect. "Eleanor," Richard said suddenly. "Yes? I want you to know something." He set down his book. He looked at her seriously. "I married you to help you, to give you a better life. I did not expect this." This. Her heart pounded. "I did not expect to care for you, but I do, very much." Eleanor set down her embroidery. Her hands trembled. "I care for you too. I did not think I could. After everything, but you have been so kind, so patient. You see me, really see me. No one has done that since my mother died. How could anyone not see you?" Richard said. His voice was fierce. "You are remarkable. You are strong and kind and talented. You are beautiful." "I am not beautiful," she said automatically. Years of Lady Ashford's words echoed in her head. "You are." Richard moved closer. He knelt before her chair. He took her hands. "You are beautiful to me. Your face, your heart, your spirit. Everything about you is beautiful." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I do not know how to believe that." "Then I will tell you every day until you do." He reached up. He gently wiped her tears with his thumb. "You are not what they said you were. They were wrong, cruel and wrong." "Richard," she breathed. "I am falling in love with you," he said. The words tumbled out. "I did not think I could love again. I thought my heart died with Catherine. But you have brought it back to life. You have made me feel again, hope again, dream again. Eleanor could barely breathe. "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I have since you gave me your coat in the rain. No one had been kind to me in so long. You did not even know me. But you cared. You saw me shivering and you cared." Richard cupped her face in his hands. "May I kiss you?" he asked softly. She nodded, unable to speak. He leaned forward slowly. His lips met hers. Gentle, tender, reverent. It was her first kiss. It was perfect. When they parted, both were breathless. Richard rested his forehead against hers. "You have healed me," he said. "I was so broken, so lost, but you have put me back together." "You saved me," she said. "In every way a person can be saved." They held each other before the fire. Two broken people who had found wholeness in each other. Two lonely souls who were lonely no more. Outside, snow fell softly. Inside, love bloomed warm and bright and true. 3 months of happiness followed. Richard and Eleanor were inseparable. He took her everywhere. Society adjusted to seeing them together. Some still whispered, but Richard's devotion silenced most critics. His sons accepted her more. Thomas and William saw their father's transformation. He smiled again. He laughed. They could not argue with that. James genuinely liked Eleanor. He treated her as a sister. Life was good. Eleanor could not believe her fortune. She woke each morning in Richard's arms. She fell asleep hearing his heartbeat. She was loved, cherished, safe. But happiness made some people angry. Lady Ashford watched Eleanor's rise with fury. Her stepdaughter, the girl she had treated like dirt, was now a countess. Eleanor appeared in society papers. People spoke of the Earl's lovely young wife. Lady Ashford's daughters were overshadowed. Cecilia and Diana had not married. Thomas and William lost interest once their father married. Other suitors were less impressive. Lady Ashford blamed Eleanor for this. Somehow it was Eleanor's fault. She began to spread rumors, whispers at parties, suggestions in drawing rooms. She told people Eleanor had trapped the Earl. She hinted at impropriety. She suggested Eleanor had used feminine wiles to snare a grieving widower. Most people ignored her, but some listened. Gossip spread like poison. Then Lady Ashford made her boldest move. She wrote to Richard's late wife's family. Catherine's brother was a duke. He had been fond of his sister. He had approved of Richard. He had stayed away from London, grieving in his country estate. Lady Ashford's letter was carefully crafted. She expressed concern. She suggested Richard had been taken advantage of. She implied Eleanor was not worthy of Catherine's place. She asked the Duke to intervene. The Duke, grieving and protective of his sister's memory, believed her. He came to London. He called on Richard without warning. Richard received him in the study. Eleanor was in the library. She did not know they had a visitor. Ashcroft, the Duke of Pembroke, said. He was a large man, imposing. "We must speak." Pembroke Richard was surprised. "I did not know you were in London. I came because of disturbing news. About your new wife." Richard's eyes narrowed. "What news?" "That she is unsuitable. A fortune hunter. That she trapped you in a moment of weakness. That you dishonor Catherine's memory with this hasty marriage." Richard's face went cold. "Who told you this?" "Lady Ashford. The girl's own stepmother. She is concerned for you. Lady Ashford is a liar." Richard's voice was hard. "She abused Eleanor for years. She is angry Eleanor escaped her cruelty. But the marriage was very sudden." Pembroke pressed. "You barely knew the girl. Can you honestly say she did not manipulate you? She did nothing but exist, Richard said. I pursued her. I offered marriage. She accepted. There was no manipulation. She is so much younger than you. People talk. Let them talk. Richard stood. I love Eleanor. She is my wife. My choice. If you came here to insult her, you can leave. Pembroke was taken aback. He had never seen Richard so fierce. I only want to protect you. Catherine was my sister. I do not want to see her replaced by someone unworthy. Eleanor is not replacing Catherine, Richard said. His voice softened slightly. Catherine will always have a place in my heart. But she is gone. Eleanor is here. She is kind and good, and she loves me. Not my title, not my money, me. Can you understand what a gift that is? Pembroke was silent. He could see Richard meant every word. But Eleanor had heard. She had been coming to find Richard. She paused outside the study door when she heard voices. She heard everything. Every accusation, every doubt. She backed away. Her heart was breaking. She ran to her room. She locked the door. She sat on the bed, shaking. All her old fears came rushing back. She was not good enough. She was too young, too poor, too plain. She had trapped him. She had manipulated him. She was replacing his beloved Catherine. None of it was true. But years of abuse had left scars. Lady Ashford's voice echoed in her head. You are nothing. You will never be enough. Mary found her hours later. She was curled on the bed, still in her day dress. She had not moved. My lady, are you ill? I need to leave, Eleanor said. Her voice was hollow. Leave? Where would you go? I do not know, but I cannot stay. I am hurting him. People think terrible things. He deserves better. My lady, no. Mary was horrified. His lordship loves you. He will be devastated. But Eleanor could not hear reason. The wounds were too deep. She was convinced she had ruined Richard's life. She waited until late that night. Richard had knocked on her door several times. She claimed a headache. He was worried, but gave her space. When the house was quiet, Eleanor packed a small bag. She took almost nothing. Just a change of clothes, a bit of money she had saved. Her mother's locket. She left a note on her pillow. She could barely see to write through her tears. Richard, I am sorry. I should never have married you. I have brought you nothing but trouble. You deserve someone worthy of your love. Someone society will accept. I am not that person. Please do not look for me. Be happy. You gave me 3 perfect months. I will treasure them always. Eleanor. She slipped out through the servants' entrance. The night was cold and dark. She walked quickly. She had no plan, no destination. She just knew she had to go. By morning, the household was in chaos. Richard found her note. He read it once, twice. Then he roared her name. Servants came running. Mary cried. Mrs. Blake wrung her hands. Richard was white with fury and fear. Find her, he commanded. Search everywhere. Send runners to every coaching inn. She cannot have gone far. But Eleanor had disappeared into London's crowded streets. She had pulled her hood low. She moved like a shadow. No one noticed one more poor woman in a shabby cloak. She walked until her feet bled. She found a cheap lodging house in a bad part of town. The room was tiny and cold, but she had enough money for a few nights. She lay on the hard bed and stared at the ceiling. What had she done? She loved Richard, with everything in her, but she loved him too much to ruin his life. She had heard the Duke's words. She had heard the doubt. Richard defended her. But for how long? Eventually, society would break him. He would resent her. Better to leave now, save them both the pain. She cried until she had no tears left. Richard searched frantically. He rode through London himself. He questioned everyone. No one had seen her. She had vanished. His sons tried to help. Even Thomas and William were worried. James stayed close to his father. He had never seen Richard so distraught. "We will find her, father," James said. "What if we do not?" Richard's voice broke. "What if something happens to her? She has been alone before. She knows how to survive. But London is dangerous." What if he could not finish? Days passed, no sign of Eleanor. Richard barely ate. He did not sleep. He haunted her rooms. He read her note over and over. He understood now. The Duke's visit had triggered her. She had heard the accusations. Her old wounds had opened. She believed she was not worthy. She believed she was hurting him. "Foolish, precious girl," he whispered. "Do you not know you are my whole heart?" He would find her. He would bring her home. He would spend the rest of his life proving she was worthy. She was everything. He just had to find her first. On the 5th day, Richard received unexpected help. Mary came to him, wringing her hands. "My lord, I have been thinking. Her ladyship used to visit the tenants on the old Ashford estate. There was one woman, Mrs. Cooper. She was very kind to her ladyship. Maybe—" Richard was already moving. "Where does this woman live?" Mary told him. Richard rode immediately. The village was 2 hours away. He pushed his horse hard. He found the cottage. He knocked urgently. An old woman answered. "Mrs. Cooper?" "I am the Earl of Ashcroft, Eleanor's husband. Have you seen her?" The old woman's eyes were shrewd. "I have. She came yesterday. She is in a bad way, poor child." "Where is she?" Richard demanded. "I must see her. She is inside, sleeping. She collapsed on my doorstep. She had not eaten in days. She cried herself sick." Mrs. Cooper stepped aside. "Go to her, but be gentle. She is very fragile." Richard entered. The cottage was small but clean. In the corner was a narrow bed. Eleanor lay curled on it. She was asleep but restless. Tears stained her pale face. Richard knelt beside the bed. His heart broke. She looked so small, so lost. "Eleanor," he said softly. "Eleanor, love, wake up." Her eyes fluttered open. She saw him. For a moment, joy lit her face. Then fear. She tried to sit up. "No, you should not be here. I left. I do not want you to—" "Stop," Richard said. His voice was firm but gentle. He took her hands. "Stop running. Stop believing lies. Listen to me." "Richard, I heard the Duke. I heard what people say. I am ruining your life. I am not worthy of—" "You are worthy of everything." Richard cupped her face. His eyes were fierce. "You are worthy of love, of respect, of happiness. You are worthy of me, and I am barely worthy of you." "That is not true," she whispered. "It is. Eleanor, you brought me back from the dead. I was a ghost before you. I went through motions, but you made me live again. You made me feel. You made me whole. How can you think you are not worthy?" "Because I am nothing," she said. The old words came out automatically. "I have nothing to offer. No beauty, no dowry. No, you are everything." Richard's voice was passionate. "You are beautiful. You are kind. You are strong. You survived years of cruelty and remained gentle. You loved me when you had no reason to trust anyone. You gave me your heart even though yours was already broken. That is everything." Eleanor sobbed. I do not want to hurt you. I do not want people to say terrible things. I do not care what people say. Richard pulled her into his arms. She clung to him. I only care about you, about us. We have found something rare, something precious. I will not let fear destroy it. I will not let Lady Ashford's poison touch us. But the Duke, I spoke to Pembroke after you left. I told him everything about Lady Ashford's cruelty, about how you survived, about how you love me. He was ashamed he believed her. He wants to meet you properly, to apologize. Eleanor pulled back. She searched Richard's face. Truly, truly, and I do not care if he approves or not. I married you. I love you. That is the end of the matter. You love me with everything I am. Richard kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. I love you desperately. I was going mad without you. Do not ever leave me again. I am sorry, she whispered. I was so afraid. I thought I was helping by leaving. You nearly killed me. His voice was rough. Promise me, promise you will never leave again. Whatever happens, we face it together. I promise, she said. She meant it. I am so sorry. Come home, Richard said. Please, come home and let me love you. Eleanor nodded. She was exhausted. But for the first time in days, she felt hope. Mrs. Cooper packed them food for the journey. She hugged Eleanor tight. You found a good man, child. Hold on to him. I will, Eleanor promised. They rode back to London together. Eleanor sat before Richard on his horse. He held her close. She leaned back against his chest. She felt his heartbeat, steady, strong, real. When they arrived at the townhouse, the servants cheered. Mary cried with joy. Mrs. Blake hugged Eleanor. Even Thomas and William looked relieved. James smiled at his stepmother. Welcome home, he said simply. Richard carried Eleanor upstairs. She protested she could walk. He ignored her. He took her to their chambers. He set her gently on the bed. Rest, he commanded. I will bring you food. Then we are going to talk. Really talk. No more running, no more fear. Eleanor nodded. She was too tired to argue. He brought her soup and bread. He watched her eat every bite. Then he sat beside her. He took her hand. I understand why you left, he said. Your stepmother hurt you deeply. She made you believe terrible things about yourself. But Eleanor, none of it was true. You are not what she said. How do I stop believing it? Eleanor asked. The words are always there, in my head, telling me I am not enough. You fight them with truth. Richard kissed her hand. Every time you hear her voice, you remember mine. I love you. You are worthy. You are beautiful. You are everything. And when people whisper, let them whisper. Anyone who matters sees the truth. Those who do not can go to hell. His bluntness made her smile. Richard, it is true, he grinned. I am an Earl. I can say what I want. She laughed. It felt good. I missed you, she said. Never as much as I missed you. He pulled her close. I have a plan to silence the gossips once and for all. What plan? We are going to host a ball. The grandest ball London has seen in years. We will invite everyone, and I will declare before all of society that I love you, that you are my choice, my treasure, my countess. They will see how I look at you. They will see how you shine, and the whispers will stop. Eleanor felt nervous. A ball? Richard, I am not good with crowds. I will embarrass you. You could never embarrass me. He tilted her chin up. You are gracious and kind and lovely. and you will have me by your side every moment. We will show them what love looks like. Real love, not society's pale imitation." Eleanor took a breath. Then she nodded. "All right, we will host a ball." Richard's smile was brilliant. He kissed her deeply. "That is my brave girl." The preparations took 2 weeks. Richard spared no expense. The ballroom was decorated with thousands of flowers. Musicians were hired. The finest food was prepared. Invitations went to everyone of importance, including Lady Ashford and her daughters. When Lady Ashford received her invitation, she nearly tore it apart. But she could not refuse. To decline would be a terrible insult. So she would go, and she would watch Eleanor's triumph with a bitter heart. The night of the ball arrived. Eleanor was terrified. Mary dressed her in a gown of deep sapphire blue. It brought out her eyes. Her hair was swept up with diamonds woven through. She looked like a princess. Richard came to escort her downstairs. He stopped in the doorway. His breath caught. "Eleanor," he said, "you are stunning." She blushed. "You are certain?" "I have never been more certain of anything." He offered his arm. "Ready to face them?" "With you, yes." They descended together. The ballroom was already full. Conversation stopped when they entered. Every eye turned to them. Richard led Eleanor to the center of the floor. The orchestra began a waltz. He took her in his arms. They danced. Eleanor forgot the crowd. She looked only at Richard. His eyes were full of love. He smiled at her. She smiled back. Around them, people watched. They saw the way the Earl held his countess. They saw the way she looked at him. This was not a fortune hunter. This was not a cold arrangement. This was not a cold arrangement. This was love. Genuine, deep, undeniable. When the dance ended, Richard did not let her go. He raised his voice. "My lords and ladies," he said, "thank you for celebrating with us tonight. I want to say something about my wife, Lady Eleanor Ashcroft. The Countess of Ashcroft. My Countess." The room was silent. Eleanor felt every eye on her, but Richard's hand was warm in hers. "Some of you may have heard gossip," Richard continued. "Suggestions that my marriage was hasty, improper. Let me be clear. I pursued Eleanor. I asked for her hand. She saved my life by accepting." He looked at her. His voice softened. "I was dead inside, empty, lost in grief. Eleanor brought me back to life. She did not pursue my title or my wealth. She gave me something far more precious, her heart, her trust, her love. I am the one who is blessed. I am the one who married above my station, because she is the finest person I have ever known." Tears streamed down Eleanor's face. Richard wiped them gently with his thumb. "I love you," he said, not caring that hundreds watched. "I will love you until my last breath. You are my home, my heart, my everything." The room erupted in applause. Even the hardest critics were moved. This was no manipulation. This was devotion, pure and simple. Lady Ashford stood in the corner. Her face was twisted with rage, but no one looked at her. All eyes were on Eleanor and Richard. The Duke of Pembroke approached. He bowed to Eleanor. "Lady Ashcroft, I owe you an apology. I listened to lies. I doubted your sincerity. I was wrong. I can see you love my late sister's husband. I can see he loves you. Catherine would approve. She would want Richard to be happy, and you make him happy. I am sorry for my harsh words." Eleanor curtsied. "Thank you, Your Grace. I could never replace Lady Catherine. I do not try to. But I love Richard with all my heart. I will care for him always." Pembroke smiled. That is all I could ask. Welcome to the family. More people came forward. They congratulated the couple. They complimented Eleanor. The evening was a triumph. Only one shadow remained. Lady Ashford finally approached. Her face was a mask, but her eyes burned. "Eleanor," she said. "How lovely you look." "Lady Ashford," Eleanor said quietly. Richard stood protectively beside her. "You have done well for yourself," Lady Ashford continued. Venom dripped from every word. "I suppose you are very pleased." Eleanor looked at the woman who had tortured her for years. She felt pity, not anger. Lady Ashford was bitter and empty. Her cruelty had brought her nothing. "I am pleased," Eleanor said. "Not because of titles or wealth, but because I found love, because I am no longer afraid, because I know my worth now. You tried to break me, but you failed. I am stronger than you thought, and I am free." Lady Ashford had no response. She turned and left. Cecilia and Diana followed. They would not be invited to this house again. Richard pulled Eleanor close. "Are you all right?" "I am perfect," she said. And she meant it. The ball continued into the early morning. When the last guest finally left, Richard and Eleanor stood alone in the ballroom. Candles flickered. Flowers perfumed the air. "We did it," Eleanor said. "We faced them all. We won." "We did more than that," Richard said. He pulled her into his arms. "We showed them what true love looks like. We showed them you cannot break real love with gossip or fear. We showed them we belong together." "We do belong together," Eleanor agreed. "I am sorry I ever doubted it." "Never doubt again," Richard said. He kissed her, deep and slow and full of promise. "You are mine. I am yours. Nothing will ever change that." "Nothing," Eleanor whispered against his lips. 6 months later, Eleanor stood in the nursery. She held a tiny baby in her arms, a daughter. She had Richard's blue eyes and Eleanor's dark hair. Richard came up behind her. He wrapped his arms around them both. "She is perfect," he said, "like her mother." "She is ours," Eleanor said. Wonder filled her voice. "I cannot believe this is my life. A husband who loves me, a beautiful daughter, a home. I am so happy I could burst." "You deserve every bit of it," Richard said. He kissed her temple. "You deserve the world." "I have the world," Eleanor said. "I have you. I have her. That is everything." Richard thought back to the night he saw her in the rain, a broken girl in a grey dress. He had saved her, yes, but she had saved him too. They had healed each other. They had built a life together. A beautiful, imperfect, perfect life. "I love you, Eleanor Thornton," he said. "My countess, my wife, my heart." "I love you, Richard," she said. "My Earl, my husband, my home." Their daughter gurgled between them. They laughed. Their family, complete, whole, happy. The Earl's sons had competed for her attention once. They had pursued her stepsisters. They had barely noticed her, but their father had seen her, really seen her, and he had won her heart instead. It was the best decision he ever made, and every day for the rest of their lives he made sure she knew it. Love had conquered all, just as it always should.